Hello, everyone. I know I'm like 45 seconds late. I'm sorry. We had to get Zoom connected. How are you, everybody? If you are watching this live and on the actual Zoom, great. And if not, and you're watching it on Facebook, that's fine too, because I actually am watching the conversation on my phone. But today I'm excited because I've already had I had the privilege of interviewing JM Ryerson on the F Word podcast. And so today he's agreed to bring his beautiful words to our community so that we can talk some more about how to let's go win. With that, I would love, JM, for you to talk to everyone a little bit about your background in financial services specifically so that they understand the connection there. He is one of our male allies. He is all about feminine talent, and his wife is very involved in our community, Lisa Ryerson. Welcome to the first book club, the Friday Reads book club. You're my first, JM.
Oh, wow.
No pressure.
It's so special to be the first. Oh, it's awesome. So, thank you for having me. That's amazing. Book club, as you know, reading is a passion of mine. So I love that y'all are doing this, and I really thank you and very humbled that this was the book that was chosen. So specific to my background, with financial services, I started back, '03, I guess was my first year, and dove right into mortgage protection. And at the time, they were only in one market. And I said, wow, why don't we go nationwide? And the guy who ended up being my business partner said, well, why would I do that? And I said, why not? And so we went on the quest to really, I said, let me open up the first one in Portland. And we took it from Portland to 8 locations. Then we merged in with another company. And that was what I consider my second company that we went nationwide with. It was a terrible idea. The values were not in line. It was 5 years of it was awful. And then from there, we actually left and went to, we were going to start our own until I found just the right values and so clear we were total in alignment. And so again, nationwide, but in a different market space. And so now that's with Appreciation Financial. So I've been doing that now, 17 years, and it's been amazing to my family. I have so much to give back because of how amazing financial services has been for myself, for my family. So that's my background there. I love it. I love building teams. I love, the culture and the values. And that's why I talk so much about it, because of so many of the mistakes I personally made and have figured out, there's a better way to do it. So
I love it. So I want to make certain I say hi to Danielle Burns, who's watching from Indianapolis. And I see Samantha Winters on her. Just had a birthday. So happy birthday, Samantha. And we also have Don McFarland on here watching too. And if you guys have any questions, please ask them. If you're live on the call with us here on Zoom, great. And if not, ask them in the group, because that's what we're here about. So I want to dive in because I'm actually going to tell this, even though I thought, I'm not going to say it, but I am. So my husband, Daryl, he has been living vicariously through your book because of me. And recently he was on a call with Krista Neely Gonzalez, her husband, Rob Key. And Rob and Daryl were talking, and he says, do you know JM's book? He goes, I live it every day. We have Post-it notes on the bathroom wall. She has read every chapter out loud to me. That's how much your book means in our household. So I hope you know. I wasn't going to say it, and I thought, nah, I'm totally telling on it. It's great. It's great. How does that make you feel when people say that as an author? Is it kind of weird? You're getting read even. It's like, oh my gosh, I love how humble you are.
Well, it fills my bucket a ton, just because, again, when I started this was just for my 2 kids, and that was the purpose behind it. But when ultimately somebody talked me into sharing it with other people, when I hear people say thank you, I just that's amazing, because again, these are not even my words necessarily. They're other authors, mentors, my parents, my grandparents, and so many of those stories, unfortunately, sometimes pass with the people that go with them. I didn't want that to happen for my kids. So for anyone else that gets something out of it, amazing, and I love that.
I love that. So we're actually going to talk about some of the chapters in the book because you, first of all, anybody, I'm an avid book reader, and I get a lot of books sent to me in the mail. People in PDFs of people who are authoring books and they want me to read, and I think that's great. I've not written a book. I have been featured in about 8 books on different, whether it's marketing, people talk about financial services, and I'm always grateful for that, especially because I didn't have to write the book. But I have to say the thing that I love the most about, and I have your book like literally in front of me, is that it's very readable. You could read this on an airplane flight if we actually did that anymore. You could read this sitting, in your backyard for an afternoon. It's an easy read. What I will tell you quite honestly though is that is an easy of a read that this book is, you're going to take time to actually sit in some of the stuff that he talks about. So you think I'm just going to get through it because it's nice. And I love that you have a nice glossy feel to it. It feels good. I mean, I'm really a book reader. When I say I'm going to totally get into this, I love the fact that you wrote the book on paper that can be written on. I write in my books. I think there was thought put into that, and I'm grateful for that. And I like the way you broke up the chapters. So that's me totally breaking this down. I think too that what I liked about it was the way you broke the book down. You allowed me time to sit in and noodle in the thoughts of some of the things that you spoke about. So there's 12 main chapters of this, and the very first one, you jumped right into vulnerability, which I thought was really interesting because not a lot of men, I'm saying it, I'm owning it, not a lot of men jump in and say, hey, let's all get vulnerable. Yeah, we're here. No, it doesn't happen. And so one of the things that you said, literally it's the second chapter, and it's only, it before anybody freaks out, it's 2 sentences. And you said, how I wish someone had told me sooner about the freedom and joy that comes from being vulnerable. Like most valuable lessons, I figured out its worth only through its absence for most of my life. Talk about the vulnerability part of why you wrote in this, because this is fabulous. And Brene Brown is literally cheering. I can hear her in the background.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing.
She is.
It's just the most profound lesson I learned. My first company, as amazing as that culture was, and I loved it. I did, however, almost at the expense of my marriage, relationships with friends, that because I wasn't being myself, I wasn't being authentic. We won, no question, but at what cost? And it all because I had to look a certain way, or that's what I thought, right? That it had to be a button-up suit and tie. You'll notice I'm in my t-shirt, my hat. This is me. And it's so freeing to just be you. You don't have to hide behind anything or try to sound or look a certain way. That's actually, I speaking of vulnerability, somebody said, well, why did you put in that you had a ghostwriter? I said, because I did. I didn't like my writing style, actually, after 3 chapters. I didn't want to read it. So I said I needed some help. And so so many people, I think, they don't want to show weakness, or they don't want to put themselves out there because it's scary. I'm 100% the other way, in that it's so freeing. And again, when you think of what the book was intended for, I don't want my kids to put on masks. I want them to be the beautiful people that I know they are, that I've seen since they were born. And so, unfortunately, as we get older, we start to, because of trying to fit in societal norms, all of that. And so, yeah, to your point, most men don't talk about it, and still don't. Some
Yeah.
of my good friends, I'm from Montana, like, guys are, really? What has California done to you? I'm like, you know what? It's such a freeing experience. And that's the best thing I can say, is just not having to hide behind anything, not having to sound a certain, just being you. Holy cow, you know how much more energy you have to be you?
Yeah.
So that's why I started with that, because I truly, truly wish, and it's, again, my parents, like most parents, were protecting me. They taught me boys don't cry, was what I was taught. I'm not suggesting to go bawling all the time, but I'll tell you what, if I'm moved by something, no problem. And that's such a different way than I grew up, in my childhood.
So I love that. And I wish, so Daryl's golfing today. He needed a day, and he and my son went golfing. But one of the things I think that touches me the most is that he told me right off the bat, like, if I feel I feel all the way. I don't hold that back. And I think that's great. I think the other thing too, when you work in financial services, and I have to tell you, so Danielle Burns has said amen to this. And I also want to make certain I say hi to Tony Gonzalez in Arizona. How are you? And Jackie Porter. Hello. How are you? I think that, the fact that you address this right off the front kind of sets the tone. And that's what kind of grabbed me when I first started, because I read this first chapter and then I was like, wait, I need to go back and revisit some of the stuff. And I love, by the way, one thing that you said in this, and then I want to go on to the next chapter, was greet, smile, and encourage unreservedly. And I cannot tell you how much so I always say kind people are my kind of people. I agree, and I live my life by that. It really helps somebody like me who's genuinely a happy person go through life. And I used to kind of temper that, and I don't anymore. So if I'm in the store and I look at somebody, I go, hi, and I know they might be like, "Ah." I got to be me, and I'm not going to hold that back.
I love that because you never know. You may have just made their day. Like, for instance, try not to be the creeper. But if I see a young lady that looks nice, I would have been like, oh, I'm not going to say anything. Well, why not? How amazing does it feel if you say, you know what? I think you look just amazing. Congratulations.
Or
Or,
what? Yeah, just
you
if
know
you look.
what?
I go
Yeah.
up to
And
people
how,
all the time, and I can say this. Danielle Burns and I hang out. I will go out, and she knows I'll do this. I'll walk up to somebody I do not even know. And say, I just want to tell you, you look amazing, and I'll like something and they go, oh, it's so funny to watch somebody say, oh, because they might be, you don't know what their moment is. So I don't hold back, but I love the fact that you said unreservedly. Don't keep doing that. And I think that that's really important for us, and it's human. I think it's getting back to some of the human. You're going to hear a lot of themes through this, everyone, as we go through these chapters of what he's talking about being human. And I love this. Your second chapter is on culture, and I know that you dipped right into the Simon Sinek right off the bat, and so we're all pretty Simon Sinek fans out there. If anybody hasn't read that, go just watch the TED Talk on why, and that'll do it. But you asked some of the best questions in fact, I wrote best questions on page 24 of your book, and it said I started answering some critical questions that should have been answered before I even started. And like, why does this business exist? How many of us really sit down and say, other than we think it's a good business, but why does this exist? And I love that. Or does my business culture resemble my home culture? That got right in. Why or why not? So talk a little bit about the point of culture, because I know that you're very culture sensitive, not only in the organization that you work within, but within your home as well. I know this is a part of what makes the Ryersons tick.
yeah, again, this was just the mistakes that I made. So some of our first companies, we'd have 5 or 6 values, and somebody say, "What's your company values?" And if we had 6, I could remember about 5. And then we were so smart, we added a 7th one, and I could remember 6 maybe, but I could never remember all of them. And the point is, look, when you put your values, you want like-minded people that you're rowing the same way. And it's not that you're not diverse, don't take it that way, but in terms of those core values, the character of the human being, it just makes life so much easier. And we have what's called the reticular activating system, and what that means is when you know exactly who you're looking for, it's amazing when they just appear. But if you're not very clear on exactly who that person is, and I'm not talking male, female, tall, short, any race, creed, religion, any of that. I'm talking the values and the character of the human being. When you know exactly what you're looking for, they show up into your life. But if you're ambiguous and kind of vague as to what that is, you're going to struggle. And again, I only learned that through all of the mistakes. Even after reading so many books on it, I didn't get to be the clarity and to embody that every single day. So, for instance, excuse me, courage, fun, and transcend would be Let's Go Win's 3 core values.
Mm-hmm.
And if you break those each down, we have to embody that every single day. So anyway, culture is just so important. And I think people need to spend a little bit more time on it, both in their partnerships and business and in relationships. And it just goes so much more seamlessly.
I think the timing of this is, you have no idea how apropos, because before we spoke, I was on the phone with Danielle, and she's my friend, and I had something come up, and she said, you know what? She said, you stay true And it goes back to clarity equals your bottom line on your business too. I mean, when you stay very clear about what your mission, your intention is, it helps lead you to closing your business. So the clarity is the close, if you will. And so it's interesting how you still get caught up in the masks of what you were talking about earlier. And here I picked up the phone and said, Danielle, am I doing this right? And she said, absolutely. You stay within what your boundaries of what you set. And I also have to tell you one thing else you just said was just as important, is that when things are good, it's because the synergy of the people and the quality of them and all the things you're talking about, they're on that same train, that bus, they're riding it with you. They're like, yeah, we're here. When it all of a sudden feels downright awful and I don't like this, and not that discomfort I think grows people, but I also think it's a big signifier that you're not in your best self at that moment. I think change can be hard, but I don't think it should feel bad. Does that make it? Am I being clear?
No, it makes total. I mean, look, most people don't like change. It's 100%. That's a fact. But when you're true to yourself, it's amazing how much you can give and how much, again, better received it is. So the whole fake it till you make it, it doesn't work.
No,
or
it
at
doesn't.
least not long term. Okay. I have seen short term wins and people, but I'll tell you the other thing, it doesn't lead to happiness. So even if an extra zero goes behind your bank, great, but you're not happy. So who cares? Being your authentic true self, you know it when you see it, and it is like, wow, how cool is that they are just them, right? And how I celebrate that, even if I don't necessarily agree with what they do, for them to be that free, it's an amazing thing to watch.
It really is. And so I'm grateful that you wrote about that. I know that in chapter 3, you talk about simplicity. So you can see everyone as you're watching this. And hi, Kathy Sikorsky. I see you watching too. I think that each one of these, you've really brought and narrowed down the gap of what it is that we need to be sort of focused on. And you said simplicity is the great equalizer. And I think that there is nothing truer than true on that. I have a friend of mine who is, and I mentioned this to you before, he's an estate planning attorney down in Naples, Florida. His name's Ed Woolman. I love Ed because Ed doesn't speak in legalese at all, like at all. And he said one time, he says, I refer to all of our trusts the way that my clients understand it as soon as I say it. So he'll say, hey, we're going to work on your, can't change your mind trust today. We're going to talk on your, we're going to work on your I can't change my mind trust today. Because if he says revocable and irrevocable, it may not click immediately, but that does. All of a sudden, people know what that means. And he operates an entire legal estate planning office on simplicity. How important have you found it to be for people to be successful? Because you are a motivational speaker as well. You go into and do a trainer. You go into companies and talk about that. How important is the simplicity factor?
I think it's everything. So literally this morning I was working on a blog, and the title is to-do lists are a waste of time. And the point to that is, I have a to-do list. I have several, don't get me wrong. But if I don't get the core 3 things I need to get done, all of that stuff, it's just stuff. And I watch people do it all the time. So for instance, just being so simple, even at home, like let's say your dishes, for those type A people out there that need their home to be perfect, is that more important to get that done, or is it more important that you spend quality time with your child?
Yeah.
I promise you, your child does not remember the bowl that you washed or didn't wash, but they remember that sit down game and it's such a simple idea. Or for those financial, I talk about this all the time. The most simple way to succeed is to pay yourself first. It's not the way people do it. Typically, they pay their bills, then they go out and have fun. They never pay themselves. I'm like, put it in reverse. Pay yourself first, then your bills, then your discretionary income. And it's the most simple idea, and it's not complicated. It's just if you can follow it, right? And so that's why I think simplicity. We have so much going on in our world. We don't need it to be more complicated. So anyway, that's
Warren Buffett. That's how he built an entire empire, was on simplicity, and he operates that way. And I think that he's one of the people that I I look to on that topic, to be honest. Like I remember one time I was in Nebraska, I had to go to an event. I actually made it a point to drive by his house because I wanted to see it. And it's a house. I mean,
1,500 square feet. I
it's
think,
on a beautiful corner. I mean, he's got a
yeah.
very nice piece in a nice neighborhood, but he's lived there and he's, why would I live someplace else? I mean, this is exactly what I needed to do. So I think that when you look at people who are very smart and stuff, that they are operating in that simple, as you mentioned, a lot. And I think we need to do a lot more of that. And I continually hear, people who I consider friends. I know Kathy Sikorsky's listening, but she's somebody who one day picked up the phone and said, "Hey, I see you doing this. Do this instead." I value her as my friend and as a member of our community because she didn't even hesitate. She was like, "This is how you do this," or "Don't say this," or what. I mean, that she was making it simple for me, and I was making it much more difficult. So I think that that's a really important part. But I got a lot of really good information out of that particular chapter, because of how you and you and I both talked about the I'm tired of the hustle mentality. Just I don't I gotta address this. I have a career today in social media because of Gary Vaynerchuk. I do. He spoke at an event. I happened to be very timely in the delivery, and he made me very noticed at an event in a good way, and it helped literally kick and spawn my career. At the same time, as much as I appreciate the work, he is a hustle mentality person, and I cannot subscribe to that because it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And you're literally giving somebody permission in chapter 3 to say no to that. And I talk about that because you and I went on in the podcast talked about you hustled at first, and then you realize like it ruins stuff.
Yeah, so it's not that hustling is a bad thing, right? But again, when you're building, especially teams, or let's say setting an example for your children, if it's all hustle, 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 but not actually enjoying, let's say, other things other than work, or the hustle and grind, I hear it all the time, hustle and grind. I'm like, gosh, that sounds really short term, right? Like I can hustle short term, but I'm going to get tired. And so that's part of why I'm kind of opposed to it. And again, I hustle all the time. My wife would tell you I work too much. And that's when I know it's like, all right, it's time to have some real work-life balance. And so that's the point, I think, of that. And to your friend Kathy, what I love about the simplicity in her message, she didn't preface everything by saying, "Oh, Sheryl, I think you're so wonderful, blah, 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 blah." She said, "Sheryl, you need to do it this way." And because of your relationship, because you know that, I see that that simple form of communication is so much more effective than all the prefacing. And then you're like, "So what were you calling about?"
Yeah.
And I see that so frequently, and it's unfortunate.
Well, she is an attorney. I think she gets to the point. So
I love it. I love it.
I have to give her props on that one. So chapter 4, this is the one Daryl would just walk away right now. He'd be like, "I know all about the routine." So you discuss routines. And so because of you, one of the things that I do, you made things very easy and it's very simple on how to create. And one of them in particular that drives my husband nuts is that I put post-it notes in my it's become my routine now. I have my post-it notes on the bathroom mirror of the stuff that I've set my intention. We're going to talk about intention, but it's part of my routine now. So I think they kind of cross over two places. I live by my little post-it notes. So you broke down the routine though, because I think I want you to talk a little bit about whether it's the, getting your sleep, but like losing weight or reading books. I see these people who are like, "I'm going to read 52 books this year." And I just kind of like, okay, well, I can't do that. And it's almost shaming people to some degree. Sometimes people get a little judgy, like, "You don't read like 19 books a month?" It's like, yeah, no, I don't. Talk to us about the routine part of your message.
Well, so much of our routines literally run our lives. And unfortunately, if people aren't, again, intentional with that routine, they may not be supporting their goals. So for instance, just having, is that routine helping you achieve what you're trying to do? Is it helping making your life more simple, or is it making it more challenging? And so I talk a lot about with hardwires, because 80% of our hardwires are put into us before the age of 5. That's before we even have a long-term memory. And the challenge with that is, so that's running, kind of putting us on autopilot. So if you don't take a look at your routine and say, look, how can I set myself up with the best position to win? You will run on autopilot, not necessarily doing things that are supporting, whether you want the, quality family time, you want an amazing business. So I spend a lot of time on routines alone, because a lot people have never even thought of it. If maybe when it was structured from a coach when we played sports, sure, that made sense because the coach knew what the end goal was and why we're doing it. But who is your coach to set up your daily routine? And there
Yeah.
are a lot of tools out there. But to your point, especially with the routine of reading, I love reading, but sometimes less is more. Sometimes spending a lot of time in one book, not 19. And I'm not judging that way either. Like, great if you can do it. I can't personally,
Yeah.
but I love that they have a routine of reading. I think it's awesome. So anyway, just people slowing down and looking at, what does my routine look like? Do I give myself ample time? Am I feeding myself rather than, and I see this a lot, especially with females, they take care of everyone else first. And I'm like, if you don't take care of yourself, you cannot take care of these other human beings. So my wife and I talk about that a lot. I'm like, look, you have to take care of you first in order to be your best version to take care of the family. So
I like that. And I know on page 57, you talked about to stop wasting time, you need 3 things. And this is something I've been really working hard, like really hard to incorporate. One of them was a strong morning routine. The other was full commitment to the thing or person in front of you. And the third one was your trigger. And so for me, I have a tendency to, my trigger is I'm a pleaser. I love to fulfill people's wants, dreams, needs, everything. And I realize that desire to do that messes with my other 2, which is my morning routine and my commitment to what it is that's in front of me. I need a checks and balance on my triggers. And so you talk a lot about that particular thing. And tell me something that's in your morning routine, just to give an example. What's
sure.
what's in the JM routine?
So I always start the first thing with my gratitude, 3 things. And that you mentioned 3. That's scientifically wired. Our brains really can remember 3. So I start with my 3 things of gratitude. Then I go right into my brain games, and I send out the daily quote to my family, something positive, and giving them something to feed on. I go right into my meditation, read my 10 to however many pages, and right into my coffee. Then once I do all that,
Coffee with MCT oil, which I now drink.
oh, awesome. I love it. It's so good for our brains. Our brain feeds off fat. So I
Yep.
love that. For those people that can deal with it, because it can be tough on your stomach, for
Yep.
me, it's been amazing.
Yep.
So that's my typical daily routine. And then I'll do my workout if I have time. Otherwise, just part of my routine is sweating once a day.
Yeah. I love it. And the next chapter coincides with it, which is about intention and setting that intention. I wish Lucilla Williams, I'm going to make sure she's tagged in this because she owns a company even called The Intentional Advisor. She is all about intention. And you talked about the schedules and things, and you literally say, does your daily schedule have purpose? How many people actually think, I would really love if, for those watching or whatever, even if you comment after this is over, how many of you actually set a purpose around your daily schedule? So like when I'm very big on using a planner page to write everything down. And I now, because of reading this, I had never, all these years, 49 years I've been on this earth, I have never thought about having purpose in my daily schedule until you actually wrote that. I just did what was on the to-do. I was getting stuff done. I was the GSD girl. And so now I kind of look at stuff and I don't feel bad when I remove things off of it. So like it gave me permission, like that has no purpose for me. I can't just say yes because, and I get back and I tell that person no. It's really hard for me.
Well, remember, every time you say yes, you are saying no to something else. And that is a lesson that's really hard, especially for pleasers, because yes, yes, yes. But the problem is it's actually very selfish, because if you say yes to everything, you are now saying no to whether it be your business, your husband, your son, your whatever it may be. Maybe it's your health. People that say yes and yes, you have to learn to say no. So speak with intention, always asking the question of why am I doing this? And it's just, I ask that question, what is the purpose? Why?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think often enough we think that well, I'm doing it because that's expected of me. Okay, but why? Why is that expected? What are you providing value? Are you trying to look a certain way? And so again, it's just spending a little time. And I talk to my kids all the time, slow down and breathe and ask the question of why. Why are you angry? Why do you want to do this? Why are you? And it's the simple questions that lead us to what our intention should be, I think, in that moment.
Yeah, I know that Danielle Burns says on here, I'm so bad at that. And Kathy then said, of course, and she said, no, I don't actually do that. So I mean, some people are doing it and some are not. And I want to make sure I say hi to Melissa Woodjoy from Michigan. She owns a wonderful financial service practice called Pearl Planning. I got mad respect for some Melissa out there. I love one of the questions that you asked along those lines was, does my child enjoy this activity? That was a big one. I think there's a lot of I mean, maybe not today because of quarantine. I actually think quarantine's been really healthy because I think we've taken these children, and I point the finger at our own home, out of you got to go to this activity, to that one, to that one, to that one. And I do think that physical activity is very good for them. And I think team sports are very good. But sometimes, like, I'm exhausted listening to parents talk about I always say 19, whatever, the 4 things that their kids are involved in. And I think, do they ever get a break? And so I love that. Does my child enjoy this activity?
It's a good one to ask because, again, I've fallen victim all the time where they'll sign up for a sport and they don't want to go. And, well, because you signed up for the sport or because I told you so. If you take them back to, why did you sign up for baseball to begin with? Oh, to be with my friends. Well, your friends are going to be there. You want to do, oh, yeah, I want to go there. But it's so easy if we slow down and just ask those questions. And if they don't enjoy it, no problem. After that season, of course, from a commitment standpoint, but let's not do that any longer.
And I think there's an idea almost of, as you're signing your children up or you're looking at activities to keep them involved in things, I think almost having a couple of those 1, 2, 3 easy questions on there that say, why would you enjoy this? You can go back to it and say, remember, you filled this out with me. This is why I would enjoy this activity. Because, I think there's unrealistic expectations sometimes on children. They're just little humans. They're tiny people that they don't always understand that they wake up and have bad days. Like, they can't ever have a bad day. They can't ever have a headache. They can't ever be non-motivated. Is this fair what I'm saying? And I think there's days where we just have to give them a break. Like, you get a mental health day.
It's true. And we all want our children to be independent and you want them to think for themselves. I'm coaching an amazing kid, I call him, but person right now. And so many of his goals are wrapped into his family's goals. So we're breaking through right now to say, why? Why is that important to you? Well, it's important to my dad. That's not what I asked. And that's not long-term. In fact, that's going to lead to a lot of resentment most of the time.
Agree. And I love that you addressed that kind of in chapter 6, you talked about accountability. This is a big one for me. I actually was talking to someone recently, the I don't know, some people have mentioned like the Corona 15 pounds, or I would call it the COVID 19 pounds that people are putting on during this time. And it's because of the most weight, the best shape I've ever been in. I had a trainer, and it wasn't so much that because Cameron was standing next to me, but it was because he was standing next to me. Does that make sense? Like, I had to do my own push-up, but he was there to go, you can do this, and let me yell and cuss at him, which I did do, and a lot. And he would say, the angrier you get, the better that form is. Keep going, like, So the accountability, I think it's why Weight Watchers works. I think so talk a little bit about like, what are you looking for? I mean, what do people look for in accountability or accountability partner?
So specific with accountability partner, just somebody to check in, not to judge, just somebody to be there to say, hey, you said this was important to you. How you doing on it? And we will take care of it from that point forward if somebody just checks in. The problem is we will lie to ourselves all the time. We let ourselves down, no problem. We will let ourselves down way more often than we will anyone else. That's the unfortunate part. And so having this book actually was finished because my son, at the time he was 8, said, hey, Daddy, how's your book going? Not very good. And that day I was like, this book is being done, because I had it on my mirror for 3 years and I wasn't following my own stuff that I coach on. But my 8-year-old had the wherewithal to say, hey, Dad, I've seen that on your, how's it going? And that's all it took to spark, you know what? I'm not doing what I say I'm going to do, which is the biggest lesson my parents taught me. Do what you say you're going to do and do it a little bit better, is what my dad would always say. But, having that partner just to be there for support and not judge, just to check in. I think it's so important.
It is. It is. And I love the fact that you remind everyone it's your responsibility to take accountability for any failure. You are the person that is ultimately responsible for it. And you can change it, but it is not anybody else's fault but yours. So so to that point, one of the things that I did after reading your book was I was trying to figure out, I've struggled for a very long time. My feet have hurt. I've traveled a lot. I've had terrible knee problems. I fell in January and hurt my knee. And it was a lot of excuses. It really was just a lot of excuses. Like, I can't work out because my knee. And then finally, when I went to the orthopedic surgeon, and he said to me, you have amazing flexibility, except you're not pushing yourself to the potential of what your body wants it to do. I highly recommend that the easiest way to get you back and up and running is to get on a bike and start riding. Because that motion, it's the easiest of the static movements that you can do that repetitively will train big muscle groups. And I came back, my husband is a physical therapist, and he was going, yeah, I told you that same thing too. But he can't tell me that. So one day I finally looked at him and said, I want to go buy a bike today. I didn't even own a bike. I've always done bike at the gym. That was my cop out. Well, there's no gym. So that's it. So the bike's coming this week. We went last week and bought it, and they have to build it. And I bought myself a nice bike, FYI, everybody. I didn't go out and buy some whatever. I said, you know what? I deserve to have a nice bike to work, because I think that it'll make it more enjoyable than I just bought. So I love that you wrote about that. It actually personally applied to me. That's why I said this is a phenomenally well-written book. And I mean, although I know you admitted to having a ghostwriter, these are still your ideas and words and concepts. So please take ownership of that. I think it's great.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, Beth Moss. I see you watching. She's with Producer's Choice. She lives in Arizona, where it's like 111 today. I can't live there.
It's a dry heat, Sheryl. It's fine.
It's a dry heat, huh? It's just a dry heat. So your chapter 7 is about mindfulness.
How much time do we have? Because this is one of my personal favorites.
I know. So talk about that. There's so much you've written in here that I have underscored that I thought I can't even. So and you talk about labels blocking mindfulness too. Given today, I think that's important. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, labels, man. And we all do it at the blink of an eye. And we even introduce ourselves that way. Hey, I'm JM and I'm in financial. No, you're so much more than that. Don't pigeonhole yourself. But we are literally have become just, I guess, accustomed to doing it that way. And then we label somebody because they're whatever profession they do, then they fit in that box. And it's like, when you really get to know somebody, they are so much deeper than just that label. So specific to labels, I mean, we can all improve on it, because a snap of an eye, we snap judgment all the time. Blink of an eye, we look at somebody and we put them in a box. And
It's
by the
so
way,
true.
we are terrible. We don't know. So we assume we know who these people are, and that's truly not who they are. Yeah, I mean, literally, I could spend the next hour. I love mindfulness. I think it's so important that people have self-reflection, whatever that looks like for you. And
And
so,
it's every human. You say on page 89, if you want to live a mindful life, the labels must go. I applaud that one very simple, deep sentence, because I feel as if in financial services specifically, we have an enormous amount of labeling. And if we want to make a change, that has to stop. I mean, it has to stop. This entire chapter, like I said, I'm flipping the pages and I'm laughing because there's so much underlined that I'm like, I can't read through all of this. I don't have the time. And it's communicating with purpose you talk about. I mean, all of this, speaking your truth. Ah, Danielle Burns, if you're still watching, you and I talked about speaking our truth literally an hour and a half ago. So I think that this chapter, the whole book could have just been about this chapter.
yeah, I
That's how good.
enjoyed this chapter a lot. I spent a lot of time on it. So thank you. I love
How
that.
did you get into meditation? You talked about this already, and I know this is part of your mindfulness.
Yeah, so when I was playing basketball in college, it was just part of something we learned about. And it came in and out of my life in my early 20s several times. And then I kind of lost favor with it until probably my mid 30s, to where it was an everyday. I don't operate well unless I've done it. So it's just, whether it's guided, whether it's just quieting the mind, the whole idea of self-reflection and just sitting down and just quieting, giving yourself that moment. I think not enough people do it, and they're scared to, because we have very creative minds. We've got a lot going on upstairs, but
There's a
so many
whole lot of dialogue going on up in that noggin.
so much. Actually, Let's Go Win. I went back and realized that I wrote about this when I was 22 in a journal, and I lost that journal. It was buried, and I was cleaning out the garage. I found it the other day, and I was like, I've been marinating on this idea
Mm-hmm.
for virtually 20 years. So anyway, the meditation for me, again, it's just something to do daily. I actually coached my son on it last night, my 10-year-old, because he couldn't sleep, and I said, buddy, we're going to do a little box breathing, and we'll do sleep meditation. Sure enough, within 10 minutes, he was out.
Yeah.
Nightmares gone, out. Maybe he was just tired, but I woke up this morning and I asked him, how do you feel? He's like, Dad, that was awesome. Thank you. And I'm like, music to my ears. So
Yeah, and that's great. And in chapter 8, when you talk about communication, because you're talking about communication with yourself when you're talking about meditation. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're communicating with yourself, but then you're also in this particular chapter talking about how you communicate with others. And specifically, one of the things that you spell out very clearly is there's just no passive aggressiveness allowed. Just real talk. Say what you mean what you say, get to the point. It's why the reasons that, with Kathy Sikorsky, I love her because she's just to the point. She says what's on her, she means. She says it kind. She's very kind in her delivery. And that what she said came from a good place. And it's why she's a fabulous, attorney. So communication, I think, is something that's just gravely, we just don't do enough good skill sets around that. Would you agree?
yeah, I don't think enough people spend time to think about how they communicate, and how is it received? And if sometimes the answers are poor, right? And I ask for feedback. After every time, if somebody watches, I want to know. Like, I don't want to, it's great to hear the compliments, but if there's
So I'm going to tell on you after our podcast. Your first question was, how did you feel that went?
Perfect. That's exactly
That's
right.
what you did. It's the very first thing you said. And I was like, it's great.
I have to know, because I want my words to come through. I want people to understand what I'm saying. And if I'm doing a poor job, gosh, now I'm wasting their time and mine. So yeah, I think most people just need to slow down. Again, I always say slow down and think about it. And especially, I talk about this younger generation so much with texting. I'm like, that's important. You need to pick up the phone or go see them. Please don't send that text. because we cannot read their nonverbal cues on written text. And so often I see people are literally at each other's throats about, well, this is what they said, so they meant that. You don't know what they meant.
Yeah.
You actually have zero idea unless you actually ask. So yeah, communication.
I think there's a whole and dynamic to miscommunication, especially on Facebook and places like that. I have a girlfriend who is a psychotherapist, and she says, I have an entire practice today because of how social media and the interpretations that come behind it and building narratives around what somebody said. And then actually this is what they meant. And so, misunderstanding another person's intent. And you talk about that in the book as well. I think that is extremely important. And I'm going to touch on one thing, and I always go back to kids because I give JM a hard time. He needs to write this book for children. I'm putting it out there. I'm manifesting it. I am putting it into to hopefully have it in existence, because kids need these skill sets. Think about if these skill sets that we're talking about and every one of them were in our children, we would have such better adults later on, a little bit more well-rounded if we give them an idea. When you were talking about kids today and texting or people, one of the things that I tell people, I remember when the kids were younger, I used to always have them, they wanted to have a pizza delivered. If they wanted to do anything, guess what? They had to pick up the phone and be the one that called. I would give them the money and they could order the pizza, but I made them get on the phone. Hi, I can hear my son now, Justin Brown. I live on Fernwood in California. And he was very nervous. My son today is a 31-year-old man who runs he's the operations manager for a very large distribution plant. And he has beautiful communication skills. And I'd like to think that just simple things like allowing him to communicate with the person and ordering the pizza, allow your girls to stand in line and make purchases with money. I think that's really interesting. I was at a store very recently. Gentleman was there with his young daughter and just, buying groceries. And she was scanning, but when it came to the money, he reached in his wallet and and I said, if you really want to take that all the way and follow it through, let her pay. Let her hold money. Let her do it. And he looked at me and he goes, I hadn't thought about that. And he gave her the credit card and let her learn how to do that. And so I think that the skill sets that you talk about, you touch on children a lot in these chapters. So you really did write it for your kids, but you wrote it for all of our kids. So I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Very, very important. You also, I have to tell you, in part of that communication, everyone, he wrote about, ask and don't label. I think that's so, so critical, especially given our environment today. We're terrible. As you said, we're terrible at this. I mean, I had another chapter I sit here and I underwrote, but no one behaves or responds perfectly. It's impossible.
It's impossible. It's literally impossible.
What do you do to troubleshoot today? What are some of the skill sets that you maybe go to that, when you're reading something that, well, maybe they didn't mean it this way, or maybe what's something that somebody can do?
I tell anybody, especially when I coach with sales, I let them know, always ask why. Good sale, bad sale, if they didn't go with you, ask why didn't you move forward so I can get better? Or if you did, let me ask you why you moved forward. I want to know what resonated with my audience at all times, right? And every conversation you're in with an audience. So especially with families, all the time I'll coach them on, why don't you just call and say, what did you mean by this? What are you feeling? It's far better to know than to not know. The unknown is scary, and it's that we don't want. So why wouldn't if somebody's mad at me, great. I want to know that so then I can address the problem. So
yeah,
just asking questions.
In 9, you talk about humility. And I think selflessness is an important topic today. We need to take, I think we sometimes need to take inventory of, you talked about the me versus we bit. In your coaching teams of people and your work that you're doing in leading teams of people today, how important is humility?
So my favorite quote is, it's amazing what can be accomplished if no one cares who gets the credit. And I just wish if I could change leadership worldwide, it would be that. It's like, my analogy is, it's so much more fun to have a birthday party where you're celebrating with people instead of just celebrating by yourself. Like, what kid wants a birthday party by themselves? But I see so many leaders use the word I, or the worst is when they take credit away from someone else. Everyone wants recognition. They want credit. Give that to them. Don't take that away. So I think humility is a big thing for a lot of leaders to learn. Amazing companies are built by those humble leaders. Companies, unfortunately, are also destroyed by the egos.
Watch out. Your wife's watching. Say hi to Lisa.
Hi, babe.
I'm taking good care of him, Lisa. He's in good hands. So you also talked about fun, and you and your wife and family have a lot of fun. You also have a lot of fun in the work that you do for, work as well. How did fun make its way into the book? And I'm going to talk about the naked old guy. We're here. I've been waiting for this.
Yeah, we're not on this earth long enough to not have fun. And it's also something I try and remind myself of, because I can also get extremely serious. And I know it when Lisa looks at me and says, "Oh, you're in serious business mode." Well, that tells me I need to lighten up, and I definitely need to smile more. I've never had anybody come to the company and say, "Oh, fun's one of your values." I don't want any part of that. It's like, of course you want to have a good time. It's just life's too short not to.
Yeah. And so that's what you talk about. And I touched on this whole situation and touched the naked old man. I touched on the topic of the naked old man. I want to make sure we're all clear on that. But he wrote this, so we have clarity on what my comments are about. You have to admire the naked old guy. I prefer to cover up in the locker room, but in life, I no longer hide who I am. I love to enjoy my days, and I do not care what judgmental strangers think about that decision. Do you know that I have in front of me a quote from Bette Davis? It says, "What other people think is none of my business." And the minute that every time that I get frustrated or I see something, I look up at it because it's right in front of me. And then I go, that one's not mine. So talk about the importance of becoming the proverbial naked old guy at the locker.
Yeah, we touched on it briefly earlier. It's just to be that free, to truly not hide yourself. I mean, that's how you came into this world, and damn it, that's how that guy's going out. He is literally out there for everyone to see. The idea is to be that way in all walks of life, and how much more receptive. I'm not talking in the locker, right? And that's where it was the funny part. But I want to be that guy. I want to get to that point where there's zero masks on. In fact, there's not even a darn towel on me. But to be that, and so you come into the world that way and you go out the world that way. In the middle, it's such a mess that we try to pretend, all these things that just be you. And that's the whole idea of being the naked old guy at the gym.
And I think that that's what most people feel when they're at let's say you're at a conference and you see somebody very confidently being themselves, and you sit back and you go, "Oh, I want to be like that person." When you come into your truth, when you take it all, for example, one of the things I gave up, I did this in 2019 and I'm never going back. I am never wearing heels at any event ever again. My feet legitimately hurt. When you have traveled as many miles as I have and walked as many airports as I have and as many halls of hotels, and you've had to be on stage for hours at a time, I'm not wearing them anymore. Cheryl's truth is Sheryl wears tennis shoes. And you know what? If somebody is not going to hire me to come and speak because I wear tennis shoes when I'm talking and it makes me move faster and I'm much more myself, then it's not for me, right? So it's that. So find your thing. Find your thing and stick to it.
Your back, hips, knees, so much. The heels are awful for human beings. They're not meant to be worn. Orthopedic surgeon says, "I agree."
It says it all the time. And 11, you talk about courage and about the things that hold us back. And I have to tell you, recently there was something going around Facebook around a woman who apologized because she had seen something that had happened at an airport, and she sat back and she got on Facebook Live and she said, "I didn't say anything, and because I didn't have my courage." And she goes, "And I really want to apologize to the people that I was responsible for not stepping up." And I think we've all been in a situation where something's been awkward and we want to say something, but we don't. Courage is something that I also think is contagious. What do you think about that?
Yeah, what I always tell people is courage is like a muscle. It gets stronger the more you use it. And again, there's so many examples where if somebody just took that courage, the gentleman in Minneapolis, all those people filming, had they just literally gone up, probably got arrested, but push the officer off, that gentleman is not dead today, in my opinion. And that's not even getting political, but that would have taken a lot of courage. I'm not talking about doing that, but I'm saying take the step, take that one step of courage. And next thing you know, it's like the snowball going down the hill. You're practicing it all the time. So it allows us to do. It does. It does.
It takes a lot. You have to dig into a space inside of your heart and your brain, sometimes even in your muscles, to make them move, to do something that you just know, something's not right and doesn't feel right. And we sit back and we watch. I'm raising my hand. I'm guilty of that. I have done that. I have sat back and said, that felt wrong. And I think that there are individuals, and I mean, I know if Danielle Burns is still watching, she's one of the most courageous people I know. She says things. And I love that about her. Sonia Dreisler, she says things, and I love that about her. And I tell them that. And I keep hoping that as I lead a group of people, I had something happen last week in the group that I had to do something for me, which was courageous. And, I wasn't going to put up with a comment that was made. And so you have to just step into that, and it's uncomfortable. Ooh, it's so uncomfortable. But I love that you talked about it, because it really leads into your last chapter, which is really what we're all after, which is the transcendence. It's even the name of your podcast.
Yes, it's my favorite word. I hope more people start to understand what that means, but to rise above. And it's just
so it's not just hooey balooey. It's not kumbaya. Talk about transcendence.
To rise above your self-limiting beliefs. Again, if there's something to eradicate, it would be that. So often the people that I coach, they limit themselves. No one else, not their circumstance, not their environment. They do. Their own mind, things that they choose to believe. And anything I can do to strip that away and let them know you are an amazing person. You can do whatever you choose to do, but it is a choice and you're choosing not to. And when I can break through, or when they can get that breakthrough, it's amazing what people can accomplish. So transcend in life is what my tagline is. I hope more people continue to do it, because you deserve it and the world deserves for you to do it.
One of the things that you and I talked about in the podcast, and it's how I think about things. So my mother passed away when I was 6. And I think about my mom at 39, and she died, and she had these 2 daughters. And I always think now, when I don't go after the dreams or the goals, and I own that. That's my responsibility to do. That's not anybody else's, although I can have great accountability partners. Ultimately, Sheryl is responsible. I think about my mom. And I think that as a parent, anybody who has a child or someone that they care for, would you want them to hold themselves back? Because you think about your children, JM. They're amazing. You and Lisa want the very best for them. You want them to step up into who they are in every opportunity, right? And yet, I don't know if we have that conversation with ourselves. So I think about it from my mother's perspective. Would she want me to hold myself back? She gave me a life to live it. Am I living it? Am I getting all the experience out of it? I don't know. And I think that that's where books like what you've written, the conversations that you have, the trainings that you do, become really critical to remind us that we have value and we matter, and the goal is to transcend. Fabulous book.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing. And thank you to all the people watching. I hope they enjoyed it.
They do. And I will have a replay for this available on our YouTube channel. I'll get that uploaded later today. But just again, please know I am grateful for what you do in not just financial services, but in our community as a whole, and all that you and Lisa give back and do in the community everywhere you're at. So this is great.
Awesome. Thanks, Sheryl. She'll kill me if I don't say it. If you guys have more questions, you can check us out at letsgowin.com or connect with me at Let's Go Win 365 on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
I love it. And we'll make certain that we have access to get your book. We'll put it in the link as well.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks,
take care.
Have an
Bye,
amazing
everyone.
day.
You too. Bye-bye.